All right, everybody, this is Ian Faison from Vetrepreneur. We have an awesome session today with Julie Nadel, the wife of Jack Nadel. We had a little entrepreneurial pivot. Jack wasn't feeling well, and Julie's is a lifelong entrepreneur and wanted to step in, share a little bit about her experiences with Jack and her experience as an entrepreneur. Julie, great to have you on.
Thank you so much, Ian. My pleasure.
Well, let's kind of get right into it. So our audience of veteran entrepreneurs, military spouses, and our community absolutely lives the things that Jack believes as an entrepreneur, and it's so exciting to share his content with them. So tell us a little bit about your background, both yourself as an entrepreneur, how you got to know Jack, and how you've really kind of embraced his methods.
Okay, so this is a second marriage. Jack had a wonderful 54-year marriage to his late wife, Ellie. He started his company, Jack Nadel International, with her 63 years ago. They just got J&I, we're going to call it for short, Jack Nadel International, just went into the Hall of Fame of family-run businesses. It's always been run by a Nadel. Jack started the company, then his younger brother, Marty, 11 years younger, ran it when Jack retired at age 70. He's going to be 93 on October 4th. And now Marty passed away, and his son, Jack's dear nephew, Craig, is running the company now. We have 25 offices around the world, and the camaraderie and feeling amongst 130 branding consultants is incredible. I was telling Ian on an off-camera chat that these guys email each other to help each other. Like, can you find this type of glass or this type of hat? And that's really unheard of among salespeople, because usually they're so competitive, they're not really interested in helping each other. So the family feeling at his company is amazing. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story before I go back and tell you my story. Jack I was fixed up with Jack in 2003. I was divorced, he was widowed, and we became friends right away, and it turned into a romance down the line. He wanted me to understand his business, so he took me to a trade show in Vegas at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center, which is this giant, oh my God, ridiculous, huge room. And I walk into the room, and he was attacked by all these people because he's like the grandfather of the promotional marketing industry. So I walked over to the luggage display, Leeds Luggage, and the woman says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Julie Nadel." She said, "Are you with Jack Nadel International?" So I said, "Actually, I am Mrs. Jack Nadel." I guess it was a few years into our relationship. "I am Mrs. Jack Nadel." She said, "The real Jack Nadel?" Like she could not believe that the real Jack Nadel was actually standing in the room. I said, "Would you like to meet him?" She said, "Oh my God, are you kidding? I really would." So this is the kind of venerable figure that he is in the industry. And the way he got started is such an interesting story. He enlisted in World War II at age 19. And he went over to Japan. He trained to be a navigator, radar bombardier, and was sent over to Japan, based in the Tinian Islands. And he flew 27 B-29 missions over Tokyo. And to come back alive from that, I think is a huge accomplishment. And especially being a navigator, which I think is such a vital role in a crew of 11 on these aircrafts, because you had to figure out how many miles you could cover with the amount of gasoline that was left on these 17-hour flights. And he and his 11 crew, including himself, made the first emergency landing in Iwo Jima. The gas tanks were riddled with bullets. They filled it up, and they said, "Good luck, hope you can make it back." And he did make it back to the Tinian. It's hard for me to even talk about it, because it's such an emotional thing that he was able to do this. And believe me, I've been with him to so many lectures when he's talked about this, and every time I well up, because I cannot believe that he actually made it back. So flash forward, he decided that he had taken enough orders in the Army, that it was time for him to give some orders. And I think, too, psychologically, he was able to approach becoming an entrepreneur in a kind way, because he had had, I don't know all the names of the military positions, but the people that were above him maybe weren't so kind in order giving. So he learned a way to deal with these people, but always remembering that he was the boss. He did put that separation in there, and he set up a structure that was so successful. He started out with his oldest brother, who died early in life, but they formed a company in about 1946 called Pacific 46 or 7 Pacific Trading Company. And they went to the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce and looking for deals. And there was a Chinese delegation looking for navy blue fabric. Now, there was no navy blue fabric, but he and his brother bought Army olive drab, of which there was an excess as the war was over in 1945, and had it dyed navy blue and sold it to the Chinese. So I would call Jack not a prodigy, not a Bill Gates, not an Elon Musk, but an opportunist. And he knew how to always find the opportunity in every possible deal. And the first tip in his book, find a need and fill it. And this is a perfect example of that tip.
And I think that's what's so interesting about, I mean, he's been an entrepreneur for 70 years. You've been an entrepreneur for pretty much your whole life. And it's so interesting to hear
I'm only 71, so give me a little leeway.
Yeah, well, yeah. So he's been an entrepreneur as long as you've been alive. And so, you know, it's so interesting to hear these things, because, like, especially nowadays, that kind of like hustler mentality is really sought after for entrepreneurs. And to know that you can say, hey, you know, we're going to buy these things and we're going to dye them blue and we're going to resell them to the people who really need this stuff.
That's what an entrepreneur does. That's what an entrepreneur does. And so I got divorced with 2 kids. I was 37 years old, an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I had to go out and earn a living. I and my ex-husband both got into medical school, and I didn't go to put him through because this was 1967, okay? I tell my grandchildren this, and they look at me, are you nuts? Because they can't even relate to that happening ever. But in those days, if there was enough money for one, it went to the man. So when I got divorced, I went to the comfort zone. I went to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, but I took a job in events instead of in the medical part, which is what I was used to. I worked in open heart surgery, etc. So this was a totally new job. So I did the events for the hospital. And at one of the events, one of the board of directors came over to me. He said, I'm opening up a new offices. I'd like you to do a party for me, or, you know, away from the hospital. So I had to get permission. And because, once again, honesty, another tip of Jack's, honesty. Because if you start lying about anything, you're going to have to keep lying, because you're going to forget what you said to Ian. And if you're not going to forget what you said to yourself, and you're going to forget what you said to the third person. So I would say his tip about always being honest is a good tip. So I said to the gentleman, how many people? And he said 1,000 people. I said, okay, I'll take the job. And that was how my company, Parties Plus, was born in 1978. Had I had the benefit of a Jack Nadel and the Nadel Method, which I'm going to go over with you, honestly, Ian, I would have been Martha Stewart without the jail time. and because Jack just instinctively knew how to create success stories. I did make a success. I got bought out by a public company. I actually did, but I did it the hard way, not the easy way. So let's take the first step in the Nadel Method. Identify a business that you love. Well, I loved catering. I loved parties, and I'm a very organized person. So that was really great, really great. And when I did this party for 1,000 people, of course, I bought my food at the equivalent of a Whole Food. So I wasn't making money on this party. And I was chopping the crudité or the vegetables in my kitchen. And I was driving the 24-foot stick shift truck myself. And I know I don't look like I can do that, but I really can do that. And I saw at the end of the party, the wives were lining their husbands' soup pockets with napkins and putting the pastries that I had baked into the pocket. So I knew that I had a success on my hands, but I couldn't identify what to do next. I didn't know, and here's the second step, the right questions to ask as I did my research. Properly, I should have gone to work for another catering company and learned. I just did everything on the fly. I did make a success of it, but that's really not the way to do it. And those of you people, military vets, veteranpreneurs that are out there that want to get started, so many community colleges have culinary arts programs, 2-year programs that can train you and give you the skill set to go out into the food world, restaurants, catering, hotels. Hospitality is one of the biggest industries that we have. And it's such a wonderful thing because you're making people happy.
Yeah.
Is that a great job to make people happy? Wow. I mean, you got to love that. I also did, yes?
No, I was going to say, but it's interesting that like the type of DNA that you had was just, okay, well, I'll just do it. Right? Like, okay, someone needs to drive the truck and it's me and I'm the only person doing this. So I have to drive the truck. I have to cut the vegetables. I have to do everything. And it was like, hey, we have a party for 1,000 people. And I think certain people would shy away from that. And you said, hey, let's do it.
I needed the money to support my children. And here's the funny story with all of that. So of course I had to hire people, managers and things to work. You can't do 1,000 people. So I found out the best people in the hospitality industry, catering in Los Angeles, where I lived. And I hired the best people. So I learned from them. I learned from the workers. And believe me, I live in a beautiful home in Santa Barbara, California. It's like paradise here. You know what I mean? But I'm a backdoor person. So if we're at a party, whatever, I'm in the kitchen talking to the waiters because that's where I am the happiest. I'm a worker. I will always be a worker. And whenever we have a dinner party or something and I'm bringing the dishes in the kitchen, Jack always says to me, how many waiters do I have to keep your that seat, And I said, you could have 100. It doesn't make a difference because that's who I am. But you have to kind of think quick on your feet. So I'm going to tell you a story. So then I get this next job at the LA County Art Museum. And they want to have a butter swan on the cheese table. Those are items that are made by garde-maches at hotels. There was a hotel near my home. I went and talked to the garde-mache, which is a fancy word for sculpture of butter, no Da Vinci required here. And he made this. And he said, put it in your walk-in my refrigerator. I said, my what? Your walk-in refrigerator. Well, my walk-in refrigerator was the coldest room in the house, the powder room. So the swan sat on the throne. And I had a friend of mine come with me and hold the swan on her lap, wearing a raincoat, as we drove down Wilshire Boulevard to the LA County Art Museum, where my friends volunteered because I didn't have any money to pay anybody at that point yet. I mean, I paid the main people, but people to set up, because they were handy. These girls could drape tables and this and that. And the swan was going like this and like this and like this. And by about 4 inches from the table, the neck fell off on the floor. Oh my God is right. So my friends started crying, not very helpful. And I gave the swan a tonsillectomy and I called it a duck and no one was any the wiser. So you have to kind of think. So had I had the Nadel method, I would have asked the caterers, what do you do when you're in trouble? How do you handle it? And you have to think quick on your feet. So I didn't have that advantage. And step 3 in that method, plan the deal and focus on it. You have to have a business plan for what you want to do as a veteranpreneur, whatever the field is. I don't care what it is. Make a plan. In my case, it was catering. That had to involve insurance in case someone got sick. That had to involve workman's compensation, all those other things that I know one thing about. That had to involve creative, chefing. That I did because I was the original chef. I was a very good cook. And staffing. And you have to get the best. So had I planned that, had I had that written out, I would have been way ahead of the game and way less wrinkles on my face from going through it. Then you do it. You get your deal. They're paid. You get paid. It's all set. And I was a fan of getting paid up front for everything because I didn't want to have to argue that the coffee was cold the next day. So I had to make sure I collected the money too. And I always gave the client more than what they expected. Always. No matter what. And then afterwards, I did the hard job, rule number 5 of the Nadel Method, all in the book, The Evolution of an Entrepreneur. Rule number 5, look back and see your mistakes and fix them so that you're going to make new mistakes, but don't make those same mistakes again.
And one of the things that when we had talked kind of before this about you learning from those mistakes, you're also learning from all the folks that you work with, all the caterers, all the servers, everybody.
I learned
not just your customers, but you're learning from the mistakes that everyone is making, not just yourself. And it allows you to kind of take a step back and look at everything.
Right.
You were using the method without knowing it back then.
But not successfully. I would have, like I said, I would have been Martha Stewart without the jail time. No, Jack it just was a natural for him. I am a natural salesperson. It's hard to learn how to be a salesperson, but every salesperson needs a backup team. So I had sales, maybe I had to go in and close a deal, but my people could run the jobs. And the biggest thing for the entrepreneurs out there that are listening to this is don't be afraid. Look what you've done. You fought bravely for our country in whatever field or area, wherever you were. You stood up for the United States of America. And now you're going to make it on your own and stand up for yourself. And that's how you're going to become a success. Take that fear out. There's nothing to be afraid of. And if you can't get in the front door in sales, go in the back door. And if you can't get in the back door, go through the basement window. But don't ever give up. I'll tell you a story about that. I think it was about 1980. It was right after the Olympics. So maybe it was the 87 or 88 Super Bowl. Los Angeles was hosting it. I found out about the job very late. Now, today in catering, $1 million jobs are very common. In 1988, they weren't common, and this job was about $500,000, and I almost had a heart attack that I hadn't even heard about it. So I called the gentleman at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco that was subbing it out for the NFL. I'm sure you're familiar with the Fairmont.
Yeah, I know the Fairmont.
And I said to this gentleman, I have a company called Parties Plus. We are a full-service company. I did full service, design, flowers, props, everything, because I believed in the idea of one-stop shopping. And if you could make one phone call and get everything done, it was much better for the client. Of course, I charge you a fee for that, a coordination fee. So, and there are many ways to figure that out. Do you charge a percentage of the job? Do you charge a fee? These are the things that you have to kind of think through how to do it, and depends on the times. Today, they're doing it differently than when I did it in my business. So I said to him, give me a chance. Give me a chance to come up and make a presentation because we are one-stop shopping. We're going to make your life super easy. So he said, okay. So we stayed up for 2 nights and we did the blueprints, etc. And I get to the airport and I get on the plane and the pilot says, Julie, is there a Julie here? Come up to the front. Well, you know when your name is being called over the loudspeaker, it's not a good sign at all. And my name was Julie Lotion at that time. And I came up to the front and they said, there's a phone call for you. And it was my business partner saying the guy canceled, he has a cold. And I got off the plane and I said, let's go to the local deli and get me a quart of chicken soup with matzo balls, Jewish penicillin.
Yeah.
Bring it to the airport. And I got on the next plane with the soup. I went to the Fairmont Hotel. I found out the guy's home address, knocked on his door, and said, I heard you weren't feeling well. Here's some Jewish penicillin for you. And got the job. Walked out with a signed contract, letter agreement. And always, always put everything in writing. Jack never, if he had a meeting at 11 o'clock at night, he took a secretary with him and he had everything in writing. Very important. Another tip, I can't tell you the number, but it's in there.
Yeah, in one of the 50 tips.
That's right.
50 tips surviving and thriving a business. The Jack Rudin Evolution of an Entrepreneur, which everybody should go check out. I posted the link for it in chat. So how did you get acquired? How did your company get acquired?
This is really an interesting story. I was with Drexel Burnham when Michael Milken was at Drexel and doing an incredible job. And I'm going to tell you that I knew nothing about Drexel Burnham, Michael Milken, the stock market business. I knew nothing, but someone told me that they weren't happy with the food. And so I walked into this place and I said, who's Michael Milken? And it was like an X-shaped trading floor. And I said, my name is Julie and I'd like to bring you lunch tomorrow. And if you like it, maybe you'll go with our company for food. We're very good caterers. And I brought him lunch and he liked the food. So if that was Friday, on Monday, we were catering. So that the numbers were very big because brokerage houses had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all these road shows and all of that. Then I picked up the next brokerage house, Bear Stearns. So I picked up 3 or 4. I had pretty good control of all the premieres in Hollywood. Did a lot of celebrity weddings. My record's perfect. Not one marriage lasted. I have a perfect record, 100% divorce rate. But they were great weddings. Bruce would listen to me more. I mean, fabulous weddings. She came down the staircase of designing women, 3 sound stages. Little Richard was the minister. It was awesome. The Blues Brothers were the groomsmen. It was crazy good, crazy good. So we had a pretty big reputation. I was lecturing on mega parties, you know, big like the opening of the West Side Pavilion, 5,000 people. And these always benefited charities and nonprofits. The Super Bowl, I did all the work for Peter Ueberroth and the Olympics in 1984.
Wow.
And yeah, so a company from the South heard about me and they wanted to get they wanted a presence with a celebrity, kind of like a LA celebrity-based company. So they came to me and they made me a deal I couldn't resist. And it was time for me to get out. And I'll tell you something else, which I think is even more important. I couldn't get a bank loan for $10,000 to buy a car. Okay, when I got divorced, all the credit and everything was in my ex-husband's name. So this was very difficult. And little by little, I started to make it, and I made it pretty quickly. And all of a sudden now the banks were kind of approaching me. So one of the private banking divisions of a bank, we'll call it No Name Bank, wanted to get together. So I invited them for lunch with our accountant, and we had a tasting room in our facility. We built out a very open facility. And those of you entrepreneurs that are thinking about, look, I took a big industrial space, built it out. I put no doors on any offices because I am a control freak and I needed to see everything that was going on. So it was almost like a pod, but I think you guys would call a pod. At 71, it's hard for me to say that, but I think that's what you would call it. But I could see what was going on. And it made for a very good work environment because no one was, making personal phone calls. I would say now it would be on the computer doing Pokemon or Tinder or something like that. But the no swiping right and left and all of that. So these guys came and I gave them a great lunch, and at the end, and the accountant was very straight, very square, and they gave me a bunch of papers at the end. I said, look at these guys. I said, you got to be kidding me. You've eaten all my food with great relish. You see our success. We're doing very well. We want to expand our business. So here's the deal. I have another bank. I have another bank that's interested too. So either we're printing your name on the checks or we're printing the other. Fortunately, I didn't have to do CPR on the accountant because it looked to me like he was going to fall off his chair. But they said fine. So you have to be bold enough. Don't be afraid. You guys have been in the service. There's nothing to fear after that. You've been in the service. You put your life on the line every single day. You're in harm's way. I don't care what you're doing. And don't be afraid. You know,
I love that.
Don't think that you're not equal to these people just because maybe they're working people. They are not owners of the bank. They are working people. They need that money so they can get interest off of it to increase their net worth. So just never operate out of fear.
And it's something that Jack talks about. I mean, doing missions in World War II, and being in Japan and all that sort of stuff, and turning around and doing business with the Japanese, which is just like an absolutely remarkable story and kind of shows how he views things. But I mean, it's much the same way with you, where the same sort of fearlessness of being an entrepreneur, not being afraid of the big moment or taking on a big client or selling. It's very similar. So when you sell your company, and then you're in this your period of time where like, what do I do next? What'd you do? How'd you think through that process? And I'd imagine kind of, you had this entrepreneurial itch. Did you have other ideas for companies? What did you want to do?
Well, number one, I was 37. I was about 49 years old when I sold my company. Okay, you can't go back and repeat the past, but I thought I could. So I got my records from college, and I bought myself a backpack with my kids' help, and started to take a few classes to finish up what I needed to take the MCATs to go to medical school. And I just couldn't do it. And I was an A student at an Ivy League college and all of that, but it was the organic chemistry was kind of like Russian. And I realized that you can't go backwards, you can only go forwards. So my daughter was dating a medical student. I gave him the books and I went and signed up for golf lessons. And I threw my entrepreneurial abilities into the nonprofit world. So I went on the board of the Johnson Cancer Center at UCLA, and I created a gourmet food event. We raised $4 million over 7 years for the seed money to develop a drug called Herceptin, which is now commonly used for breast cancer. I partnered with the editor-in-chief of Bon Appetit magazine, Barbara Fairchild, and she got the famous chefs, all the most famous, Daniel Boulou and Roy Yamaguchi, and all these. Oh my God, it was incredible. I got an incredible house, and we had these parties, and we raised this kind of money. And I remember taking Jack to one of these parties, and he said to me, I want to buy all the tickets, and what do I have to do in this and that? So I said, it's $2,500 a ticket, $5,000 for two. He said, wait a second, you are the most expensive date I have ever had in my whole life. And he himself could not get over. Not only was it $5,000, his wife passed away from cancer, so it was another $10,000 that he gifted at the thing. And Monty Hall was a close friend for many years, so he became the auctioneer. And it turned into, it's still going. They moved it to a hotel, however, when I moved to Santa Barbara, because no one wanted to do the work of off-premise catering. And it's just a lot of work. I happen to love it. I now I'm very involved in our medical clinic in Sansom Clinic. We just raised a gigantic amount of money to build a new cancer center, and we kicked off that merger between Sansom Clinic and the Cancer Center of Santa Barbara with an event that netted $1.2 million for the wellness community, and I got Jay Leno was the host. And it was an amazing event at this amazing home overlooking the ocean here. So I turn my efforts to nonprofit, but you must understand nonprofit. And those of you who are desperate entrepreneurs, for people, good people to go into development and nonprofit, it's a business. And the Nadel method applies to the nonprofit world the same as the profit world. Because if you go and spend $10,000 for a party and you take in $9,000, you've lost the $1,000. So you have to apply the same 5 principles of the Nadel method in the nonprofit world. There's a lot of weakness in development, and that's an area that I think you guys out there should be looking at.
And you do a ton of work with Nadel Foundation with different types of organizations still, right? Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, because I think as you've kind of transitioned your career into focusing a ton on the Nadel Foundation, like you said, there's a lot of entrepreneurial lessons, but I think that how you kind of make those connections and view those relationships, I think, is important for entrepreneurs to see.
Well, number one, we don't need to earn any money now. So all sales, money from sales of the book get contributed. Okay, we've been lucky. Both of us have done well, so we don't need to earn any money. But I am going to preface this with a funny story. So I was very scared moving up here. My children and grandchildren were in Los Angeles. It was a big transition for me to come up here. I had all my golf games set, and I was like Miss Retired Lady. I did my charity work and bridge and golf, and it was not bad. So, but Jack really wanted to live up here. And I'm really glad that it happened, you know. So he was writing Evolution of an Entrepreneur, and he finished the book. And I was up here for 9 years. And the year that he finished this book, I was named Volunteer of the Year for the Tri-County area of Santa Barbara, which was a pretty big honor, and only 9 years for that to happen.
Yeah.
He also was getting a lot of phone interviews about his book. So I did the first edit before it went to our publicist, Amber Sims, and then she had it edited, and she has an editor that she works with, and went through a lot of permutations. But before she got it, I did do the first editing. I was very involved. So Jack told a lot of stories about the book, and I was like in the other side. We have a partner's desk in our office, and I'm listening. I this, I that, I this, I that. So I said, you know, Jack, this is a partnership. I was helping you. What's wrong with the word we? There's nothing wrong with that word we, because it was a we. I didn't write the words, but I typed for you when you couldn't, and you dictated most of it. I edited the first round. So the phone call comes in now with the next one. I mean, you know, in the beginning how it starts, the publicist lines up all those phone calls. So I hear him. We did our first deal in 1946, and it was the deal about the fabrics. And he said the amazing thing was half of we was 1 year old. So that was pretty good, the half of we, 1 year old.
That is good.
Wait, then the phone rings, and it was the people calling about offering me this honor as Volunteer of the Year for the Tri-County area. So Jack happened to pick up the phone call, and they told him what it was about. And he, before he gave the phone to me, said, "We graciously accept this award." So for someone, this was about 3 years ago. So he was about 90. I would say he's pretty sharp guy.
Yeah, well, when Jack and I talked a few weeks ago in prep for you know, a lot of the stuff that he wants to do for veteran entrepreneurs is just remarkable, and sharing his lessons. And he had talked about, I made these mistakes. There's no sense in all of you making them too,
right?
Which is super cool. But
we have had so many guys that got out of Iraq and Afghanistan here, the Jonas Project, and independent veterpreneurs, and that he's met with and mentored. Unbelievable guys. These guys are divine and just afraid, and you just have to get rid of that fear factor. Once you get rid of that fear factor, once you cross that first threshold, it's easy. My God, look what you've done. This is nothing. This is nothing. What do you have to lose? A little money, maybe. And if you follow Jack's methods, I don't think you're going to lose any money. I think you're going to make money. And it's not just Jack. There are programs out there, SCORE. There are advisors and all kinds of mentor programs out there. And on his website, he has a column called Ask Jack, where if you buy a book, you have to have bought a book because we want to give this money away to charities. You can then ask him a question and you'll get an answer back.
Yeah, and I think everything that he's doing is just so great to dial back into veteran entrepreneurs with mentorship and Ask Jack and all those things. So we're actually running an article with the Nadel Method on gijobs.com this week for our audience who are interested in getting into entrepreneurship. As we're kind of wrapping up here, if anyone wants to type any questions into chat, feel free. I have a bunch more. We could talk for the rest of the afternoon. I have a bunch more questions for you. But first, what was your golf handicap?
My lowest was an 18.
Woo.
Very hard when you start at 47. I'm a better bridge player than a golfer, but I'm a big competitor. So whatever I do, I compete. But I will tell you something, and let me talk to the women out there. I was the first woman really to get divorced in my kids' crowd. Okay, my daughter's going to be 46 in January. None of her, I lived in Beverly Hills, very fancy schmancy, not in a very fancy schmancy house, but I was pretty fancy. They went to a private school, and she was the only one who had a mother that was working. And actually, when I did get to, it was kind of like the scarlet letter. 2 years later, the school was asking me to talk to the single mothers because the divorce rate had risen that high. But for my 70th birthday, Jack threw me a party, and my daughter got up there, and it took a long time to hear this, but she said how proud she was and what a role model I was for her and her sister, who's 40, and that a woman can be successful on their own. They don't have to be beholden to anybody. And that kind of girl power, I think, is really important. It's important in the military. It's important in life to be able to know that you as a woman can be successful at whatever it is that you want to try. Wow, I said to myself, I had to wait a long time, for almost 44 years to hear this story, but from her mouth, but it was amazing. And I made them both work in the business, and I made them donate part of their salary to charities. And because of that, both of my children do a lot of philanthropy, a lot of charity work on their own. And I see that them paying that forward with their own children. I have 4 granddaughters. And I think that it's, and something really as simple as when you're done with your dolls, it goes to a group home where they can't have a doll because there's no money for the dolls. So I think that the children have to learn to pay it forward in any which way. You can go read a book and then rest home to an older person. You can help make Thanksgiving dinner, work on a food line at a homeless facility. But we women have the ability to do anything we want and become as successful as we want. You know, I'm not getting into politics, but Ginger Rogers did it, right? In high heels, dancing backwards. And I don't think there's anything that you female entrepreneurs out there can't accomplish that you want to do.
I mean, we see it all the time. So because we have the Military Spouse of the Year event, Victory Media puts that on. And we see it with military spouse entrepreneurs. We see it with female veterans that get out. I mean, they're amazing business owners because they understand all of those things of how to have discipline, how to have hard work, how to organize, how to be successful. Like those are the hard parts.
They have to run a house and take care of kids and all of that. And cut up those oranges for the weekly soccer games and all that stuff, you know. So really, you have the world at your feet. You just have to have the confidence to go out there. And sometimes, listen, the GI Bill is offering so many education choices. I read about that all the time. You don't need a 4-year degree from a fancy college unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something engineer that requires that. These programs, I'm most familiar with the culinary arts because I speak at the Santa Barbara City College here, but they have all these trade programs that are just amazing.
And you can, and the other thing too is you don't need to start a business that originally setting out to make $100 million a year.
Right.
You can start with something that's small, and Jack
Think
says
local. Think local.
You beat me to it.
Global. Think local. And here's a really interesting story. So we did some renovations on our house here. And I found this great guy, contractor, same people every day, which was important to me. And time was important to me. So this guy did a great job, fabulous, renovated a guest house and did a lot of handicapping for my husband around here because he is handicapped. And he put some pictures, he has permissions. I signed a release. He put some pictures on the internet. And I honestly, this is a true story. A Chinese company picked it up and he's doing a chain of beauty salons in Shanghai.
Wow.
Off of that. So you just don't know what is going to happen. But if you don't put yourself out there, I can tell you nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people fear that they're going to build something and they're going to put it out there and hear silence. And that's why you have sales and marketing, right?
That's right. Fear of failure is not acceptable. Get that out of your head, because if you have any negative thoughts, it's going to permeate through to whoever you're talking to. You can only be positive. You have to always think positively. And sometimes it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So what? So what?
Yeah.
You will get there. You will get there. And you have to just keep forging ahead. You're setting an example for your children. If you have children, you're increasing your own personal self-esteem. And maybe you don't need it for a full income. Maybe you need to just supplement your income. And that's good too. I mean, suppose you know how to make cookies and you have a special kind of cookie that your family loves, family recipe cookie. And it supplements your income enough to pay for that private school that you want your kid to go to. So take your cookies, go to Whole Foods or one of those stores and say, try these. They're awesome. Or make your own webpage, which is a breeze today, and fulfill it yourself. There's self-fulfillment and there are fulfillment companies.
Well, and, we didn't really talk about fear of rejection, but, obviously we touched on fear a bunch. But so you were just you mentioned earlier that you just walked into a brokerage and said, I'm going to bring you lunch tomorrow.
I did.
I mean, were you doing that every day?
I couldn't afford a hotel. I took a night plane, changed my clothes in the airport, and I walked into HBO in New York and said, I think I can do a great job for you. My company can do a great job for you. And I had that account till I stopped working. And they flew me all over doing all their parties.
And so that's a great, and we had a photographer on our session yesterday, very similar, where your product is so visceral, with whether it's food or photography or whatever it is. I mean, it might be a software app or something, but a very visceral product that if you say, hey, come check this out, give me feedback, what do you think? And if you see people, leaving the party with the food in their pockets, you've won. Maybe now that's if you see people sharing on social media, you've won. I don't know, you'd probably need to test that, but it's the same sort of idea that you have to have those real dialogue with customers and put yourself out there in whatever method is the best. And for you,
the customer has to know that they have the confidence in you, they don't have to worry about it. So if they know that, and if you instill that confidence in them, you're home free. And you have to do your work and do your job and make it better than what they expected. You have to fulfill the expectations.
I want to touch back on think global, start local, because it's such a smart. I mean, this is something that is. I mean, Jack's been doing for 70 years, but I mean, people are writing about this now.
Think local, go global.
Yeah. Apologies. And people like now say nail a niche, or whatever the kind of terminology, but it's the same sort of idea that if you're winning in the area where you are now, whether that's an industry like a very small industry, or whether it's just the people around you in your local business, if you win that one, you're gonna win the next town over, or you're gonna win the next brokerage, or you're gonna win the next
it's
celebrity
all about
couple.
referrals. I just told a new real estate company in town about this contractor and said, you're going to have people that come in, they buy a house, they need a contractor to fix it up, or they need ideas. Here's a guy. So it's all about networking. I think networking is really a very important aspect. Forget mailing, advertising, forget paper. I think paper is gone. I think you have to use everything through social media and through networking. And if there's so many outlets, LinkedIn, and I don't know the names of all of these, but there's so many outlets to do that with. And that's how you're going to see yourself grow. You have to have some patience. I mean, I think Jack has 3,000 Twitter followers now. That's pretty awesome for a 93-year-old guy. But it took time to build that up. And our publicist, Amber, worked very hard at it. He also won the first, what they call the ELNA Award, Lifetime Achievement Award in Entrepreneurship from City College. And he did a 2-hour question and answer forum at City College where they presented this award. It was amazing. Questions and answers, I think, between mentors and mentees in any fashion, whether it's through social media, through different websites, or something like Ask Jack at jacknadel.com, all that kind of thing. That's what makes you grow, because I didn't have anybody to look up to. Jack didn't either. Jack had to find his own way. He had one successful uncle in the curtain business, and that business is still going too. But he didn't have a mentor either, and it's hard. And I think that's why we are so intent on mentoring people to make it a little easier. And please don't forget the nonprofit world, because I am telling you, there is loads of money to be made in development and improving the human condition through your work. So that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, it absolutely. Amber just messaged me. She said more than 4,000 Twitter followers for Jack.
More than 4,000, you see.
So I'm gonna post in chat here. Jack has a web series that is really cool, online training courses that you can check out through Thrive 15. I posted it in the chat, and I'll post it in the show notes afterwards. Definitely everybody check that out, in addition to Evolution of an Entrepreneur. But I have you here, so I have to ask some celebrity stories, because I know you have a ton, and I know that Jack has a ton, because he's met half the presidents and all the cool stuff that he's done. So give me your a couple stories.
Jack's story that I think is awesome.
Yeah.
So in 1988, under Ronald Reagan's administration, William Verity, the Secretary of Commerce, asked him to join a trade mission to Japan to increase America's business opportunities in Japan. They flew over on Air Force One, or one of the Air Force One planes, and were greeted with the most remarkable Japanese traditions. So two things happened. One, they were on their way, I think it was, to Sony, and he was sitting next to the representative from Winnebago. Now, the roads in Japan are much narrower than the roads here. So the guy from Winnebago says to Jack, we just can't seem to get the business going in Japan. What do you suggest? He said, well, is it why? He said, well, the Winnebagos are big for the roads. He said, well, you have two choices. You can ask Japan to widen their roads, or you can make smaller Winnebagos. Duh! So, they came up with a Winnebago that was appropriate for the roads in Japan, and that worked great. They get into Sony, and everything is with tradition. And when Jack first went back, I think in 48, with the silverware story that's in the book, I'm not even going to tell you the story because you'll read it in his memoir section of the book when you buy the book. But it's an amazing story of how he recreated a relationship with a company with a country a couple of years before he was bombing. The whole thing is My Enemy, My Friend is his novel, and that describes all of that too. And it's pretty amazing. So anyhow, he gets to Sony, and they start him with a tea ceremony and the this and the that. And Jack starts talking to the chairman, and the chairman says, the problem with you Americans, you don't bother building relationships. You just want to do the deal. So we're interested in relationships. Why don't we try that? So Jack came up with this idea, the 3 R's of business: relationships, results, and rewards. So first forge your relationship, then do your deal. And the results of that deal are going to be the financial rewards. It's really simple. And it works. Relationships are really important in life.
That's amazing. And like we talk about that all the time with entrepreneurs that are trying to set up business, deals or whatever, and whether it's their salespeople or whoever it is, are trying to have transactional relationships. And you see the rise of customer success that is so prevalent now, especially in like software companies that are focusing, 50% of their effort on selling to the customers, and then 50% of their effort on just making sure that their customer is happy as possible.
That's great. Feedback too, negative and positive. How can you make the experience better for them? I think that's really important. So I'll tell you a celebrity story. So when I did Bruce Willis and Demi Moore's wedding, and they were awesome to work with, honestly, beyond awesome, really great. And at the wedding, and it was huge, and all these celebrities were there. Like I said, Little Richard was the minister, and Jim Belushi and all those guys from the Blues Brothers, they were the groomsmen. It was pretty amazing. Bruce, who was a bartender in catering, not for my company, but in catering, that's how he started. He went into the kitchen with Demi and shook everyone's hand because he knew how hard it was and what it takes to make it happen. And I thought that showed how much character he really has as a person.
That's awesome. That's the leadership. That's the same thing that you were doing when you started your business, was going back and talking to those folks. Right. And it's the same thing in the military, talking to your soldiers.
That's right. Let me tell you about Jay Leno.
Yeah.
I play, because that was just a few years ago. And as I said, that's on the nonprofit side. And that was celebrating the merger of our medical clinic with the Cancer Center of Santa Barbara. So I wanted to make sure, so literally this was like an empty field and this incredible property. So I built the dressing rooms and this and that. So I went up to Mr. Leno. First, we would have none of that. Mike Jay, very casual guy. And I said, so I have this lobster gazpacho for you to start out with, because I wanted to serve him his meal before he had to go out on stage and perform. And he said, yeah, could you give me a pizza? I said, what's wrong with you? Don't want? He said, I don't eat this fancy food. That's not my deal. Steak, French fries, pizza, anything like that. So regular, so real. And, his car thing, that he has these garages. So he auctioned off not once, but twice. And he had to be there for the whole thing, 2 tours of the garage. Well, I went down for one of them, and he gave me a ride in Mrs. Astor's electric car that you would go down Fifth Avenue shopping in, and I had little like a flower holder in the back seat for flowers. What a life these people had in those times! It was amazing, and they didn't even pollute the air because everything was electric. Kind of amazing. The environment was much better then.
That is great. A friend of mine works in hospitality, and they had somebody come into their Japanese restaurant, and they basically tried to. There was like a celebrity, really famous celebrity, and it was a similar sort of thing. It's like, I'd like whatever dish they want, and they're like, they don't like we don't. A waiter's like, we don't serve that. It's like, oh, that's what I want. And they're like, coming right up.
That's so funny. That's
Yeah,
so funny, really.
yeah.
The biggest thing is to find your passion. What is it? So it's not you're going to a job every day. It's you're following your passion and you're doing what you want to do, and what gives you the most pleasure in life. So many people just go to work to collect a paycheck, and it's sad for me. It's really sad to see that. The people that are most successful in life, that live the longest, that are the happiest, are the people that are following their passion, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, and those are the people that are going to be the most successful at the end of the day. And I just cannot thank you enough for coming on.
My pleasure.
We're gonna have you and Jack on real soon. I want to keep everybody can learn more from both of you, and taking the time out is just awesome. Everybody go pick up The Evolution of an Entrepreneur. Follow Jack on Twitter at Jack Nadel, and any other stuff that you want, just let us know. So, all right, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Julie,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, and have a great rest of the week.